All right, being 7 o'clock, we'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing, because following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would ask the clerk to have a reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street in the city of Wausau at 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 21st, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I would like to request everyone please silence their cell phones and any other electronic devices as to not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I thank you for your compliance. And I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Arstead. Here. Bizotto.
Here.
Boots. Butke.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Conway.
Here.
Dickinson.
Here.
Gaber.
Here.
Gibbs.
Here.
Gonnering. Guild.
Here.
Gums.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Krause.
Here.
Lamont.
Here.
Longenhan.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Mask.
Here.
McEwen.
Here.
Oberbeck.
Here.
Opal.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Rosenberg.
Here.
Seafelt.
Here.
Soibert.
Here.
Van Cray.
Here.
Vol.
Here.
Zhang.
Here.
Boots. Gonnering.
Here.
Thank you.
And thank you. I would like to welcome all of the visitors that we have here tonight in person and also the viewing audience. So thank you for showing an interest in Marathon County government. And so from there, we will move on to public comment. And we have two individuals that have signed up for public comment. The public comment period is not to exceed 15 minutes. Since we have two individuals, each will be provided up to 7.5 minutes of time to address the board. So first we have Cam Yang, and he would like to address the board. So Cam, if you would please come up here and you can use the microphone.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the time to address an issue tonight. And thank you to all you leaders for your time here also. My name is Cam Yang. I've been a resident of Marathon County since 2007 and a proud homeowner since 2008. Very proud to call Marathon County my home. And very proud to pay my taxes every year before December 31st. I want to address an issue in our county here to you leaders about the existence of discrimination and racism that I've experienced. And this is a cancer to our community, and it needs to be addressed and put on the table. And it needs to be discussed among you leaders so that you can look for a solution to eliminate this issue for your constituents, for your people in your community, such as myself. I am of Hmong ethnicity. I came to the United States as a political refugee in 1988 at the age of 7. My father was a minister for the Catholic Church. My uncles were veterans fighting under General Vang Pao for the United States, fighting for this country. Hence, that's why we came to the United States. I grew up in a poor family with 10 kids. My dad made $30,000 a year. My mom worked as a seamstress at a bridal shop, made $20,000 a year. On $50,000 a year, they raised me and my 9 siblings. After graduating high school, I did not want to see my kids grow up in a poor family like I did, so I pursued a higher education, knowing that my parents did not have the finances to support me through college. I worked part-time jobs at Taco Bell and Subway and took out student loans, which I'm still paying today on, to obtain a business finance degree from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. After college, I started working in the banking industry. That was 2004. In May of 2007, I took a position as the Assistant Vice President of Lending at a local credit union in Marathon County here. I was based out of Wausau. My job duties were to supervise and train lending staff, head of consumer lending. After a year, they closed down the Wausau location. I was relocated to Mosinee. Down there, because of staff shortages, I helped out with lending duties. There, I experienced numerous occasions of racism and discrimination. Members coming in to get loans and refused to work with me because they did not like the Asian guy. Granted, at that time, I had 14, 15 years of lending experience, but I was unqualified to do a loan for them because I was Asian. I brought my concerns up to management and leadership in the credit union. They told me to brush it off, go take a walk. You don't want to mess with these members from a small community. Many of them were relatives of the CEO. A couple weeks after my complaint about being discriminated against in the workplace by members, I was terminated without reason. The termination letter did not state a reason. It says, Cam Yang, you've been terminated effective immediately. I asked the HR person what the reason was. She told me she did not need to give me a reason. I had no choice but to file a complaint, hire an attorney and file a complaint with the State of Wisconsin Equal Rights Division. Took them 15 months to do their investigation. March of 2021, I received a determination that there is probable cause for discrimination in the workplace. It validated that what I saw going on was true. Other people, professionals in the Equal Rights Division, after the investigation felt the same that I did. And I'm in the middle of a settlement with the credit union right now. But I want to know why a credit union, if you guys don't know the history of credit unions, they are cooperatives started by immigrants in the 1920s and 30s who were discriminated against, who did not receive banking services because of their religious beliefs, because of their background, because of their social classes. Less than 100 years later, a credit union started by immigrants turns around to discriminate against an immigrant. How could this happen? So I want to ask all you leaders, Is this the kind of community that you want for us? Do you want a community that excludes people who are different from you? Do you want a community that disregards somebody's education, qualification, experience, knowledge, involvement in the community? I was very involved in the community. I was part of a planning committee that put up a monument outside the courthouse here to recognize Hmong veterans for their contribution to this wonderful country of ours. That was disregarded because my skin color is yellow. I am Asian. They did not want to work with me. Members did not want to work with me. During the investigation, my employers said it was not their job to protect me as their employee. They turned my life upside down. They killed my belief in this community. Ever since I've been discriminated against, I've been actively looking for job opportunities outside of Marathon County. I am so happy to tell you all tonight, I got that opportunity. I am moving out of here. I no longer see Marathon County as my home. Every day that I stay in Marathon County, it reminds me about the racism, discrimination, prejudice, unfair treatment that I received. I will be moving to a place that is open-minded. My kids are here with me. I wanted them to see me talk about discrimination. I don't want them to ever experience what I experienced. I will be taking my family, my relatives, my friends out of this area because Marathon County to me is so racist. I listened to a lot of the meetings on YouTube, and many of the comments were very concerning to me. There were comments that racism exists everywhere. You can't do anything about it. Even if you move away, you can't change racism. This is coming from our leaders in this county. Another comment says, we are already a welcoming community. We abide by state laws, federal laws already. Why do we need to approve a resolution for all? Another comment says, I've lived here for 20, 30, 40 years. I've never experienced racism. I'm happy that you never got to experience racism or discrimination. What about me? I experience racism or discrimination on a regular basis here. I could just walk down Washington Street and somebody will scream, go back to your own country. What about people like me who experience racism on a regular basis? And this comment by a leader that says, ignore all the complaints about racism and discrimination, ignore the attention put out in the media. It's all temporary, it'll go away. I want you to know that it's because of this mentality, it's because of the leader in this district. That's why I experienced discrimination in this district by this leader. But with all the negative comments out there, there was one comment that I was very impressed with, and this leader is a leader that we need in this community. This is a role model for all of us. This is who somebody I look up to and will try to emulate in the future. He said, change. We need to change our community for our future generations so that our youth can go out to college and they will want to come back and live in our community. Yes, change. We need to change. You may not have experienced racism and you don't think we need to change, but we are not perfect. We need to change. We need to change to grow. I am here today because I want to make a change. I am changing after my settlement here, I want to start a fund for minorities who are discriminated against in Marathon County here. That is the change that I want. I do not want to see another person go through a discrimination case like I did. I was very fortunate that I had a savings account to hire an attorney to fight for myself. But if somebody wasn't so fortunate, I want to make sure that that person has an opportunity to stand up for himself without worrying about financials. And I will change by removing myself from this community. I will be moving away, taking my family away, because I don't want my kids to live here and experience racism. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Chung Lee.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Song Lee. I live in Warsaw and 34 years, and I've been a member for the YMCA about 30 years too. And today I have trouble for Adan, and he in the city hall. But he, like this paper for me, the time I bought my house, the garage is broken, and the government house, they're not fit. And they sell for me, I bought, I fit the house done, and the garage, I don't have money. And the neighbor report for him, and he wrote 3 times the letter for me. He want to put me in the courthouse. I say, right now, I say, okay, you want to put me out? Go ahead. Then I go to the September 9. I talk to him. He said, you come and see me, why? You got to go this way, almost broken. I say, I guarantee for you, I live in 10 years, not broken. I guarantee 5 more years. If it's not broken, you put me in the jail. If it's not broken, what do you do? What do you say? The director coming, hearing, we talking, yelling together. I told him, say, I working for American CIA in Laos. The time I working for American CIA, just John Kennedy, being president of the United States, to sign the paper for General Wang Bao to take the Hmong people to cutting the road from the north, go south in Vietnam, and helping the American soldier down there. And we catch the soldier, American, and pilot, and drive an airplane, go fighting, and Vietnamese shooting the plane broken, and the pilot dropping down. We go catch about 350 people, bring back to the United States. And I working in Laos. I just I be soldier. After soldier done, they told me go to test license driver to driver truck, pickup truck, and loading the gun, loading the soldier, and loading and slap everything inside, go fighting. And the time we came to the United States, I came to the United States in 1976, August 26. But I don't want to come to the United States. But they say you have to go. You are a soldier. You not go, they have to kill you. You have to go. You doesn't go, came to the United States. And why I live in I bought my house, the neighbor don't like me. Look at me like the dog. I put something in my pool, the neighbor report for the city hall. They wrote the letter to me, say, you had troublemaker all the time. And now, he is inspector in the city hall. He wrote the letter here. Everyone want to look at it. Here, three times. The first time, April 13. The second time, July 9. The third time, July 30. She wrote the letter very bad for me. I don't know what to do. I go up, apply for the government program and tell me, say, okay, I'm helping you. She helping me, but I number 11, and now coming down to 3. But I'm waiting for, I don't know. But the Thai and the director yelling and the director coming and the day and we yelling together in the office, Adan office, and the director coming out. Everybody in the office, they're hearing. And he go out, come back, and Adan say, hey, you are a director. What do you helping him? Say, I look at your paper. The director look at the paper here, done. The director say, why you don't go look at the house? You don't look at his house. You listen other side, and you write the letter. This letter very bad for him. You have to know that. You have to go look at it. If you not look at, I don't know how to help you answer for him. And then to take me go look, make an appointment for September 17. He come in my house to look at the grass. Just I say, the time you told me, say the grass go this way, almost fell out the floor. You look at it. He said, why you don't feed? Now I want to take whole thing. I don't want to spend money to buy wood to feed, because I'm buying the wood. I broken out whole thing. I lose money. I keep money to build a new one. He said, okay, that's okay, that's it. But I don't understand why he inspector, he not coming look at. He lives on the other side, and he yelling like me, like the dog, just push me down. Please help me. I don't want to come to the United States. I'm fighting, but the immigration say, no, you have to go. You cannot stay in your country. You're fighting. They saw you, they had to kill you. I just came to the United States. Please help me. Everything. Because I don't know English. I came to the United States. I never go to school. I came to 1 week. Second week, they told me go to work. But until now, I just go working. I talk to the friend, tell them to tell me to speak only. Writing, I don't know how to writing. I know my address only. Other name, I don't know. I just came tonight. Please help me to help me for me live my life in the United States here. I want to go back to Laos. I cannot go anything because I don't have money. I have money, I go back, I not come back. I have to go die in Laos, that's okay. But I don't have money. I just come in here. That's it. I was soldier long time over there too, for CIA. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Take care of your time.
Thank you. Thank you. We will move on then. We will next have the education presentation and/or reports. And item Supervisor Robinson. Yep, by all means.
This might be the longest standing committee report in quite some time. I wanted to give you an update on the budget and then turn it over to the administrator to give an overview, and I'll finish up with just some policy issues that are before us today. First of all, I want to thank Administrator Leonard, Christy Palmer, and the Finance Department staff, all the department heads, and the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee, and the others that worked on the budget. We have a $199 million budget that we will be taking to public hearing on December 4th and for our adoption on December 9th. It reflects the priorities and the values of being the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county, and it reflects our commitments to programs and investments in infrastructure necessary to reach those goals. This year's budget does not address how we will use the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. That will be a separate discussion coming up at a later date with developing a plan that we will be presenting to the county board for your review and approval. Administrator Leonard will give you a quick overview of the budget, and I will provide, again, that overview of the policy issues that the board will consider at the end of this presentation.
All right. Thank you, HR Finance and Property Committee Chair Robinson. Thank you, Chair Gibbs, Vice Chair McEwen, and all the members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak briefly as part of this standing committee report on the status of the budget and the priorities within it. All of you received an email from Chair Gibbs and Committee Chair Robinson that provided a couple of things that I encourage you to review, as my comments are hopefully going to be brief today. The first is a electronic link to the budget message itself, and I'm going to pull that up at this point. And again, I'll make reference to it. And then the second is a presentation and a link to the presentation that was made at the HR Finance and Property Committee earlier this month. As Chair Robinson referenced in terms of process, the HR Finance and Property Committee received the budget previously. It has now forwarded that budget to the county board, and you will address it first at the public hearing on November 4th, and then you will have the opportunity to formally consider the budget and adopt it on November 9th. So in terms of priorities, as Chair Robinson asked, he asked me to provide a real quick overview of what the priorities within the budget were in terms of the proposed budget. And as I framed in my presentation to the committee, really I look at the investments that were made in the budget in three general areas. First is our people, second our infrastructure, and third are our opportunities for innovation. And again, I'll try to be brief. But in terms of our people, I explained at the HR Finance and Property Committee, and I know everyone in this room and attending virtually understands, the delivery of government service is a people business. Our staff, our greatest asset. So in terms of our work to retain and attract top talent, one of the things that the budget provides for is a compensation increase in accordance with our pay for performance structure relative to implementation of 3%. As I reference in the budget, historically our allocations have not kept pace with the private sector. Last year, this body took a very important step, allocating 2.3%, which was an increase over previous years. But again, that hasn't kept pace. And as all of you know, this year with the rising cost of living and all of the other issues that are some pandemic related and some others, really trying to keep pace with both other governments as well as the private sector is very important, and I think 3% is an important step in that direction. The second investment relative to our people is, in that same vein, a class compensation study. We allocated $100,000 in the administration budget to perform that. As this body has seen over the last year, we've been addressing inequities relative to our class compensation on a piecemeal basis. You've heard from the Highway Department, you've heard from the Sheriff's Office. I just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the Central Wisconsin Airport. What's clear is we need a holistic look at our class compensation structure, and we provided for that in the budget. I can tell you that the last time that we've had a comprehensive class compensation study done was in 2012, so it is time to move forward on that. And then, of course, the second half of that study that the board will certainly play a very big role in is how do you implement it. Also, an investment in the budget in terms of our people was relative to health insurance and benefits. 2021 marked the first year since 2008 that the county board, through your previous budget process last year, provided for the retention of a health insurance consultant. That was money very well spent. It assisted us greatly in our conversations with our current insurer. He also laid out a strategy to, in my estimation, put us in a position to be far more effective long-term and ensure that we do control healthcare costs, because as all of you know, those are a significant driver, not only in every industry, but certainly for the county. We spend in excess of $1 million a month on health insurance. Finally, in terms of investments in our people, we funded positions in a couple of key areas, and those are referenced in the budget document on page 11 as well as page 12. Public safety, ensuring public safety, it's in our vision as a county to be the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous. Providing for public safety is vitally important to that mission. The investments that we provide for in the budget here, I think, close a couple of key gaps. First, there's funding for an additional dispatcher in the Sheriff's Office. As many of you know, the discussion about providing for additional dispatch services and ultimately opening a new channel has been a discussion point for many years. The new position for, in fact, decades, or additional positions for decades, the new channel somewhat more recently, but certainly been a priority of this body for several terms. Happy to say that that final position necessary to open that additional metro channel is provided for in the budget. Also provided for in the budget is a position for the district attorney's office relative to legal assistance. Again, I'm not going to belabor the point. This body has made clear that that is a priority. It's provided for in the budget. Both those two positions are levy-funded positions. I will say, and I'll reference this briefly in another comment, our system budgeting approach that we piloted this calendar year really was helpful in having those discussions and identifying those priorities, and we're going to continue that in 2022. Another critical area that we fund a position, some position expansions are in the area of social services and specifically children's long-term support. Ensuring that children with disabilities and their families have the necessary support that the children and families need so that the children can remain in the home is really important. It's critical. So there are two new positions provided for in the budget. I will say they are non-levy supported positions. They're fully funded through revenues. There's also a fully funded revenue position through the solid waste department. So those are investments in our people. In terms of our infrastructure, there are four main features in the budget that I think demonstrate that commitment. And those are demonstrated through our capital improvement plan, the funding plan. The first theme that I'll say that emerged was the idea of, and I explained this at the HR Finance and Property, we got clear direction to just fix it. And that was that the board said routine, end-of-life maintenance issues, those need to be funded. And you provided that direction as a full board when you approved the capital improvement plan at your September meeting. So you'll see on page 105 and 106 of the, if you click on that link of that budget message, you'll see a capital improvement plan that provides for a great many things. But in essence, there's a great deal of projects that demonstrate that we are committed to fixing what needs to be fixed. We have courthouse building envelope repairs, roof replacements, HVAC replacements, parking lot replacements. Those are all elements of those things that otherwise may be deferred maintenance. And in accordance with the board's directives, we provided the funding necessary to carry those out. And I know one of the issues that Chair Robinson will talk about in his closing, and he'll discuss in greater detail, is the acceptance that's provided in the budget or planned for in the budget of a one-time levy adjustment of $716,160. As you'll see in the budget message, the budget, the proposed budget that was adopted by HR Finance, utilizes every dollar of that adjustment to fund the routine end-of-life and regulatory projects that, again, in my mind, are in line with this just fix it approach. And in addition to that, as I referenced in the budget message, what that does, utilizing those cash dollars to perform those capital projects, it reduces our need to otherwise borrow for those funds to carry out the projects you approved in September, essentially reducing the cost of government and eliminating, through the elimination of those financing costs. The other piece that, relative to our investment in infrastructure, is the idea of consolidating our facility footprint. So again, you'll see in the capital improvement plan, there is provided for funding to carry out projects that provide for the relocation of social services to our Lakeview campus with North Central Healthcare, relocation of the Veterans Office, relocation of conference room space off of River Drive, providing for the county to evaluate what are the highest and best uses of those pieces of property. And essentially, why are we doing that? Again, in alignment with the board's directives. We know a consolidated footprint is more efficient long-term. Long-term, it's more cost-effective. And I think importantly, as was referenced in one of the public meetings of the public comments before the HR Finance and Property Committee, there's considerable economic development opportunities with respect to those properties. The third element of investment in infrastructure is provided for through the budget. It's relative to roads and bridges. Specifically, that's summarized on page, I believe it's 19. That provides an overview of our highway paving and bridge programs. And it's also summarized in your capital improvement plan. People often use an analogy relative to our transportation system that it's essential to provide for our capital importance. It's a financial engine, and I think that's absolutely true. Our roadway system, from local roads to connectors, arterials to interstates, it is critical to, again, our mission to be healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county. So our strategy with respect to the budget was to essentially maintain our highway paving budget and also significantly invest in design projects, because as we've talked about at HR Finance and Property and it's been discussed at this body, there is the likelihood of a significant infrastructure bill, and we want to have shovel-ready projects ready to go. So you'll see on page 19 is summarized that we have a great many design projects that are proposed through the budget, through the funding plan. And those will position us well in the event that those federal funds are made available. Then the last kind of pillar of our infrastructure investment relates to our investment in IT infrastructure. For those of you that attended the Wisconsin Counties Association conference, you may have attended on the closing day a presentation that, among other things, probably scared you a little bit. Essentially, the message is, and I think we all know this, the question isn't if you will be the target or be the victim of an IT security breach, but it's a question of when. Governments across the country, from local to state to federal, have been targets, private businesses, Fortune 500 companies. So security, IT security is critical. So our budget, the proposed budget that was adopted by HR Finance, provides for funding for the county's portion of some significant internet technology, information technology, security investments that were proposed through CCIT. So in wrapping up our infrastructure investments, I'll say that, again, as you look at the capital improvement plan at the conclusion of the funding plan at the conclusion of the budget, there are $15 million in projects that are proposed to be funded with capital improvement dollars and tax levy as opposed to borrowing. I think that's a really important message relative to fiscal prudence. Then the last area that I wanted to briefly talk about was opportunities for innovation. The first, the ERP project, and I'm not going to belabor it. You saw a very wonderful, long presentation from Jerry, Christy, and Molly on the Workday product, and we've been having meetings all week. This is a real opportunity for the county to truly, and I know this word is overused, but truly transform the way we do business. It should drive efficiency, drive quality, and drive satisfaction within our organization. System budgeting, I referenced this before. You know, I'll be very honest, there's not a blueprint for that. It's a term that I coined, a new approach relative to building budgets here. So last year was our first attempt at it. I think it went well. We learned a lot. There's this collaborative approach to identifying needs and opportunities, strengths and weaknesses, I think is going to be something we continue doing. You'll see within my budget that I do reference there's a couple of areas where we need to get to work right away, and we've already started that. One is the jail census. This is, again, a topic of long-standing discussion at the county. It's one of our significant cost centers. It's on page 24 through page 27 of the budget. I set some very intentional targets. As I referenced in the budget, I check that email every morning. It's the first email I open to see where we are with jail census. Today, we're housing out 34 inmates. I set a target of 50. And it's going to take considerable effort to maintain that, but I'm confident our team is going to work hard to do that. I also think it's really important to note that the county board showed real leadership with the creation of the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. We had a great meeting even today, talking about how we can more effectively work together. What are the issues that we need to address? And I think that provides a great forum for those system budgeting discussions. Another opportunity for innovation is relative to out-of-home placements. That is on page 27 of the budget message document. You'll see, much like the jail census, our out-of-home placement costs for children are a significant cost center within the social services budget and the county budget as a whole. The county board has made investments in innovative approaches to managing that. You've created some positions targeting working with families to, first and foremost, keep kids in a home in a safe way if at all possible. And if they can't, work with the families as promptly as possible to get those children returned to a safe home. I think that's not only in accordance with the new federal law, but it's also an innovative approach that we need to continue working on. And the only other thing I'll say about out-of-home placement costs, and I referenced this expressly in my budget message, you'll see the cost of some of these placements are, they're very significant. Lincoln Hills Correctional Care is certainly one example. And this is another example where we're on the receiving end of policy decisions made by other governments, the state in this instance. The cost of Lincoln Hills placement for a juvenile went from about $220,000 to $425,000. So you can see it does not take too many placements in Lincoln Hills or any of the other placements listed on this that are above our budget to really put our financial projections in question. And as I reference in the budget, and I'll expressly state again today, it's important to always remember that our budgets are projections of these costs, but placement determinations are driven by the needs of the children that we serve and the families that we serve, not our budget projections. Another opportunity for innovation that you've heard me talk about before that, again, has continued to be funded through the budget is our university year partnership with the University of Wisconsin. There are currently 34 projects that we propose through that partnership that we're moving forward with. They range in a number of key areas. Again, I reference them within the budget. A Start Right evaluation was provided for in that partnership. We have criminal justice related projects being led by the district attorney around the idea of disparities, what disparities exist within the justice system and how to rectify them. We have projects aimed at assessing outcomes in our criminal justice system, in our OWI court, our drug court, our Safe Streets Options program, and projects around ideas like how do we measure what matters? How do we improve our case processing times to reduce delay? So our criminal justice system is very active in that university or partnership. We also have environmental projects, assessing how to better use road salt, how to improve water quality within the Fenwood Creek, assist us in developing our Marathon County Groundwater Protection Plan. We have emergency management-led projects that are seeking to develop a comprehensive emergency management strategic plan, including looking at a comprehensive approach, a countywide approach to delivering emergency medical services, and that's engaging several local leaders at this time. Economic development projects that involve bike ped planning, roadway planning projects within the MPO, analyzing our sober and transitional housing needs, and we have internal projects trying to help us better understand our space needs moving forward in terms of our long-range facility planning, and an HR human resources-led project around how to ensure that we have a good understanding of practices in the public and private sector to assist us in retaining and attracting a talented and diverse workforce. So our university projects are really important to that innovation component within the budget. The budget also envisions continuing several non-university-led project efforts. There's a discussion about, in accordance with our broadband work, about moving the funds from $21,165 from the University of Wisconsin Extension. That was funding a 0.5 FTE position that worked with us through our broadband efforts. My budget proposal, based on my assessment of some things that kind of hindered those efforts, I proposed utilizing that funding to adopt what I call a project management approach within the administration department, and I know that's being discussed. It's already been discussed at HR Finance and Property about, is that the best approach to go? And as I referenced at that committee, I think that's a great item of discussion for the board. Essentially, do we have a greater return on investment based on the partnership, essentially the doubling of funds that the state of Wisconsin provides for that $21,000 investment, or are we more efficient if we are directly controlling that individual's work? So that's one area I know Supervisor Robinson will talk about. Our Forensic Science Center project continues through the budget. It's within our capital improvement plan funding. I know Vice Chair McEwen has led that effort. We are talking about expanding our state debt collection usage within the Clerk of Court's office. We have tax deed process improvement projects that are being led by the Treasurer's Office, the County Clerk, and Corporation Counsel's Office. We have funding in that budget for more appraisals to assist in that effort, as well as we've contemplated how to better perform the title search that's required. Our 2050 transportation plan should be received in the very near future. That is a long-standing effort to make sure that we have a sustainable plan to provide for the maintenance of our highway system. We have, as all of you know, the largest number of lane miles in the entire state of Wisconsin in terms of counties. In fact, we have more than double the average lane miles of roads, the average county lane miles of roads. And it's really important to make sure we have a sustainable approach because just to demonstrate a point, our costs are significantly increasing. In 2006, the cost to pave a mile of roadway in 2006 was just as levy limits had really kicked in. It's the last time the state of Wisconsin raised the gas tax, was $85,000 a mile. Today, we're in excess of $210,000, or about $210,000 for a mile of roadway improvement. So we need to have a strong strategy. We're also going to move forward with a park sustainability plan similar to the the 2050 highway plan, but the goal is different. It's really to try to identify strategies to increase revenues within the Parks Department to reduce their levy impact. It's an approach that was taken in Washington County, and we hope to present the county board with some policy questions at the end of 2022 or early 2023 as a result of that. We're also working on the West Side Master Plan update which you've all heard about before, which should help us have that 25 to 50-year vision for our property that we own on West Street, Marathon Park, and the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point Wausau campus. And then the last comment I'll make in terms of ongoing non-university year projects are ongoing efforts at the Solid Waste Department. As many of the individuals on the HR Finance and Property Committee know, we have been engaged in continuous discussion about the potential opportunities for on-site landfill gas processing. That is a very significant endeavor if we actually go that route. That is envisioned under the budget to continue. So in short, this budget really does provide for a great deal of investment relative to our opportunities for innovation, but also our people and our infrastructure. I would put the annual work plan that is going to flow from this budget up against any county in the state of Wisconsin in terms of what we're trying to move forward. So I know that's been an abbreviated presentation, and I encourage you to click on the link, but I hope I've given enough of an overview, Chair Robinson, of the investments in the budget in terms of our people, our infrastructure, and the opportunities for innovation. So I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you, Administrator Leonard. I think you can all recognize the amount of time and effort and thought that went into the development of the 2022 budget. I'd just like to lay out some of the policy issues that we'd like to have you think about over the next few days. First of all, we'd like to know if you have any concerns over the budget relative to expenditures or priorities. The budget reflects the priorities in county's operations and capital through the funding of county operations and capital improvement projects. At the Health and Human Services Committee, we had discussion relative to health insurance, and our dollars are down this year. I think we're looking at long-term the potential to go self-insured and looking at the transition to that. We had the discussion about the university extension position. Do we take the $21,000 plus dollars and move it into a special projects account, or do we leverage it for a half-time position, FTE, with an extension, paid one half-time by extension but shared with Lincoln County? I think the concern there is will they be able to do all the work that we would expect and follow through on projects, and is there enough control over the work? So I look forward to a discussion of that with the board. I'd also like to point out that the KIP process changed this year. We eliminated or suspended the Capital Improvement Committee functioning this year, and instead relied heavily upon the Facilities and Capital Management Program to identify projects based upon their need, end of life and life cycle analysis. We're continuing to fund rolling stock, although I think we need to look at those numbers on a long-term basis because they've been stable for a while. We've made the commitment to IT through the ERP system that you approved. And we are looking at buildings and other capital needs, and we're working to avoid the reoccurrence of issues like the jail and the library roof. And if you look carefully at the projects that we've specifically funded, in addition to the IT, rolling stock, and others, they deal with the courthouse exterior envelope repair, the upgrades to the HVAC at North Central Healthcare Professional Building, the construction of an indoor water meter at North Central Healthcare required by code, Mount View Care exterior painting to preserve the building, the construction, HVAC construction at North Central Healthcare, replacement in the jail's kitchen and administration of their HVAC system, replacement of our parking lot and sanitary sewer repairs at the North Central Healthcare. The list goes on and on and on, but as repairs. And as you know, we spent millions of dollars dealing with the jail because we didn't act timely. We spent $1 million at the library because we were not timely, and we kept kicking those projects down the road. And I think this year we're trying to play catch up on many of those projects. The Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee, led by Supervisor Leahy, will be working on trying to figure out what sort of process we should have for capital projects going forward. And we will be making those recommendations to the Rules Review Task Force after the budget is completed. One of the important issues in here is the issue of capturing the $716,165 in levy. As you're aware, Wisconsin has one of the strongest or toughest levy limit laws in the country that limits our ability to increase the levy by basically the net new construction. So we're significantly limited. In the 2021 budget, we didn't take the entire amount that was allowable, or the allowable levy, resulting in a 16 cent per thousand tax rate decrease. This year, we have a one-time opportunity to capture some of that levy that we didn't use last year, and if we don't take it, we'll never have it again. And our proposal is to take that levy, that $716,000, and put it directly into capital projects. The capital projects, the repair projects that we outlined. The advantage of that is that it reduces future costs because we're avoiding borrowing for those projects, and we don't have the associated issuance cost associated with it. It will require 3/4 vote of the entire board at our November 9th meeting. I want to make you aware of that. The tax rate. This year's tax rate goes up from $4.53 to $4.55, 2 cents, 1.99% approximately, just under 2 cents. The 2020 rate was $4.71. So we are still well below that rate. Marathon County has been responsible in its budgeting. Our rate is 59 cents lower than the state average of $5.14. It is $1.48 per thousand lower than our peer counties or surrounding counties. Their rates are average of 603. So we're going to have some important discussions ahead, but I think, again, the administrator and finance department did an excellent job of trying to identify priorities, funding, and laying out a acceptable and sustainable approach to the future. And with that, are there any questions?
Questions for Chair Robinson?
And again, the process is, we'll have the public informational meeting on November 4th. We would ask that if members have amendments, that they submit those by November 5th. The HR Finance Committee will meet on the 9th before a county board meeting to look at the impacts, or how are they paid for. We ask that you try to identify sources and then make recommendations to the county board. But what you will be presented with is basically the administrator's budget, which was forwarded to the board. We'll have to amend it at that date. And it's a dynamic document. We welcome the opportunity to answer questions and consider what your priorities are.
Okay, any questions to Chair Robinson from the HR Finance Committee on the proposed budget, at least at the review at this point? Either you put them all to sleep, or they have all totally understood everything that you did and agree with it. So again, there'll be more opportunity as we move forward. Any other education presentation or reports by standing committee chairpersons or their designees? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to appointments. Item 9A. County Board Supervisory District 15. Action will be taken on this appointment tonight, 10/21/21. So I would ask the clerk to read the appointment.
Appointing Randy Pfeifrick, 1555 Greenwood Drive, Cronenwetter, to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors representing District 15. The term is effective upon signing of the oath and will expire at the organizational county board meeting in April 2022.
What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Robinson and second by Vice Chair McEwen. Any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just have a quick question here. The supervisor Randy Friffrick was the former, was the current position, the former individual that was holding the supervisory position here. I guess if we were to follow kind of our standard procedures where in the past or precedents in the past when there was a vacancy, you would make a posting and then allow individuals from the community to apply for that. Did that happen in this case as well, or was
Yep.
this a special circumstance?
No, Supervisor Zhang, a great question. What did happen, there was a official posting requesting letters of interest from the community, from the district. Voters from that district were given 3 weeks. It was posted for 3 weeks. We, in fact, had 2 individuals that submitted letters of interest. Those letters, those individuals were interviewed as per our board rules by the chair and the vice chair of this board. And the chair and the vice chair unanimously moved forward to this board a reconsideration of Mr. Pfeiffer as the supervisor to fill out the unexpired term from the vacancy. You must understand that Mr. Pfeiffer resigned because of a ruling the Corp Council had and has been historic preference or precedent that if any supervisor is to apply for a position and job in the county, they cannot apply for that position as a supervisor. They must resign. So in this case, Mr. Pfeiffer had applied. He resigned to make that application, and then had reapplied after the job position that the county had that he applied for was filled with someone else's talent. So but the process was followed as spelled out in the board rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, again, this is slated for action this evening. There's a motion made and seconded to approve Mr. Pfeiffer for County Board Supervisory District 15 to fill that unexpired term. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No. No.
The motion is carried. It is not unanimous, but the motion is carried, and I would ask Mr. Pfeiffer to come up, and the clerk will administer the oath.
Just raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Randy Pfeiffer,
Having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor, District 15,
having been appointed to the, having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor, District 15,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties,
of said office to the best of my ability.
discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Stand over here and sign it.
Congratulations, Supervisor Pfeiffer. Yeah, and we will now move on to item 9B, Civil Service Commission, and I ask the clerk to read the appointment because this one also is slated for action tonight.
Appointing Roger Lucy, 8007 Southridge Drive, Rothschild, to the Civil Service Commission to complete a 5-year term to expire December 31st, 2022, replacing Ed Gale.
What is your pleasure? Supervisor Robinson with the motion and Supervisor Budke with the second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Zhang, you still have your hand up. Did you wish to discuss the appointment to the Civil Service Commission?
Sorry, that was my mistake.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Supervisor Bozzotto.
Chair, I was wondering if you could just give the background of how this position came to be vacant, if you would.
I would, the appointment is the Administrator Leonard, and so I would ask him to provide the details.
Sure. The prior civil service member, Ed Gale, submitted a resignation to my office. I've been working with the current chair of the Civil Service Commission, Kelly Zagzebski, to solicit applications utilizing our online portal. And Mr. Lucy was the most recent application. And in fact, we had only one individual that submitted an application that was eligible for appointment based on employment.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the appointment to the Civil Service Commission signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? No. The motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 9C, the Board of Health. I would ask the clerk to read the appointment.
Appointing Tara Drager, 235827 North 128th Avenue, Wausau, to the Board of Health to complete a 5-year term to expire December 31st, 2023, replacing Lori Shepard.
Any discussion? Any questions on that? Supervisor Bozzotto, did you have a question, or did you have your hand up? And
Yeah, sure. Same question, I guess.
any other discussion? Oh, the same question for that. Go ahead.
I can answer that as Chair of the Board of Health. Lori Shepard, who was a physician member, a pediatrician, resigned when she moved out of the community upon her retirement. And just by way of background, Ms. Drager is an active member of a number of organizations and works with Aspirus, and her involvement in community health would be a very valued asset to the Board of Health.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9D, Aging and Disability Resource Center, Board of Central Wisconsin.
Appointing Randy Hartwig, representing Marathon County, 1893 Judy Drive, Cronenwetter, and Dana McCallalad, also representing Marathon County, 159568 Shamrock Road, Wausau, to the Aging and Disability Resource Center Board of Central Wisconsin for indefinite terms.
Any discussion? Supervisor Budke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify, is this for the actual board or for the advisory board? Because I was at the meeting, they're actually advisory board. It's not the actual board of directors. Do we need to clarify that?
This was the information that the clerk had received from the director.
It should say advisory.
But it should say advisory board, and that will be cleared up before we vote on it on Tuesday.
Thank you.
So those will be amended. Any other discussion? All right, we will move on to review and discussion of the Tuesday meeting agenda items, ordinances Town of Rib Falls rezone, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Chad and Jenny Stever. Ordinance 36-21. Any discussion? Okay, next we have from the Town of Hewitt rezone, item 10A2, a Herbert and Sherry Neff. Ordinance 0-37-21. Any discussion? Okay, moving on to item 10A3 from the Town of Frankfurt rezone, Lauren Wyland. Ordinance 0-38-21. Moving on to item 10A4, amending section 7.125 of the Marathon County Code relating to the designation of ATV, UTV routes and trails and regulations of the ATV, UTV operations within Marathon County. Ordinance 39-21. Any discussion? Any discussion? Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reading the resolution, and I know they've been, infrastructure's been working on this for some time. Has the Marathon County Sheriff's Department weighed in on this as a sheriff? Because they're going to be probably the organization that's going to be enforcing the liability insurance, the speed limit, the age limit. Just wondering if anybody got any input from the Sheriff's Department?
Anybody from the Infrastructure Committee want to address that issue? I know Vice Chair Seiler is not available tonight, so Mr. Robbins, Supervisor Robinson.
I'll try. Yes, they did weigh in. They have some concerns over the change. What the amendment does is it gives discretion to the highway commissioner, but basically sets a threshold of if there are 1,500 vehicles per day, those will be off limits in the Wausau metropolitan area. I think the sheriff was concerned about traffic, particularly in the urban area. I think that by excluding the Metropolitan Planning Organization area and giving the other language to the commissioner, that those issues can be addressed, although he hasn't weighed in on the amended version. The other concern that he had was having that operate, the original proposal was from 5 a.m. to midnight. That was modified at committee to 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. to, I think, address some of those concerns.
Other discussion? Supervisor Bizzotto.
Yes, I just had a quick question. So the resolution says that it would be amending this statutory section and to update the ordinance to be consistent with requirements of state law. I was wondering if someone can speak to the ways in which the previous section was out of compliance, if at all, or what that's there for.
Corp Counsel will address the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were certain portions of our existing code that when the Infrastructure Committee was reviewing this entire ordinance, there were concerns about whether or not those provisions were compliant with state law. Specifically, looking at the operator and rider requirements for routes and trails, Wisconsin Statute 2333 is very specific that the county can regulate ATV and UTV use. However, regulation has to be consistent with the state law as it outlines those regulations. If state law speaks on a specific area, the county can't change what state law already says. Certain portions of our existing code did have provisions that were different than what state law requires. specifically relating to operating licenses. So what was added there is language that indicates except as set forth in Wisconsin Statute Section 2333 Sub 5. So specific citations to the state law were added, and any provisions that directly conflicted with state law were removed.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Supervisor Dickinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add on, talking about the safety question, one of the other things that was added was the biannual review that the commissioner and looking at the ADT and accidents or crashes and reviewing all of that data every 2 years to make sure that there weren't segments that were significantly off. Or needed to be closed down or should be closed down either or. It also makes for the possibility of exceptions and appeals to be added in. There are some sections, County Highway E, County Highway C, that came up in discussion out in southwest Marathon County where there is some blockage as far as access to roads, particularly around McMillan Marsh, and that would allow those folks also to petition to open that up. Also regarding the safety, I just want to make a note about something we did. One of the things, consistency of time, I think, putting it from 5A to 10P, that will help regulate as opposed to the 1 hour before sunrise or 1 hour before sunset. So people will have a more understandable time to travel, and so will the Sheriff's Department handling that. And then also the opening up of more roads where we don't have segments here, segments there, segments kind of everywhere that need to get regulated. The Sheriff's Department would know that most of these roads are open unless otherwise posted. One other note I did want to make regarding the time frame, I was in favor of a 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. and after that there was a 3-3 vote on that, and so the tie fails. In the summertime, right now, sunrise is at about 5:14 or so. So right now, people can go out at 4:14 in the morning. Sunset is around 9:30, or excuse me, around 9 o'clock. So people right now can travel till 10. I'm getting some no's. You can clarify afterwards, but the consistency of time, making it 5A to 10P or 12A, well, I'll just end right there and let someone else speak.
Any other discussion? Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you. I guess what I was questioning, the sunset is now probably around 6 p.m. So it's not 9:30, but I understand where you change the hours. It's it will make it a little bit better, I guess. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, what I meant was in the summertime. I apologize for the confusion there. In the summertime, we're actually being more restrictive with the 5A to 10P. I would be looking for on Tuesday to potentially alter that to an 11 p.m., 5A to 11 p.m., noting that that would be when we would offer up those amendments. Thank you.
Well, I will give my 2 cents because I've had some contacts and had some communications from various individuals. And some of the comments that I've heard is 1,500 vehicles per day, or up to 1,500, and opening those highways. Potentially, the traffic of 1,500, even though it's a 24-hour period, the vast majority of that traffic, and I don't know the exact statistics, but the vast majority of that traffic is going to be from 10 p.m. to, or excuse me, from probably 5 a.m., 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so the time period that the roads are closed is going to be minimal traffic in comparison to the traffic count per minute, per hour during the other hours. So when you look at a highway such as Highway N, and the proposed map has it opened west of Highway 107. That is one of my districts. The town of Castle has opened up all their roads. However, putting four UTVs, ATVs on Highway N, where you have multiple semis, multiple dump trucks, because we are heavy in that area with granite and granite dump trucks. I've had trucking companies, and I've had chairmen in neighboring towns. Obviously, the town of Marathon, which has always opposed opening roads, in fact, do not have any of their roads open, is a challenge. So I would like to see that we have some potential ability to change that. I've looked at some of the maps that the Infrastructure Committee had reviewed, and there was a map of a 750 vehicle count per day. There was also 1,000 vehicle count per day and a 1,250 vehicle count per day. I think that we really need to seriously look at whether or not we're going to be the safest and healthiest in this county or in this state if we open these roads where we potentially are now creating a safety concern. Some of these trucking companies have said, look, if I'm loaded with a load of a granite and I encounter a potential four-wheeler on the road that may be going 30, 20, 40 miles an hour at night after dark. I've driven a four-wheeler UTV for many years. I slow down on that UTV without using brakes. Almost everybody does. So the brake lights on those UTVs do not come on when you're slowing down. And so you come up, a semi or a dump truck coming up upon one of those vehicles at night after dark potentially is going to create a hazard. And I think that we have to seriously look at this. I totally respect the Infrastructure Committee taking a look at this. However, I have serious concerns about whether we're creating a safety hazard by adding these vehicles onto county highways that pretty much opens everything up on this county other than the metro area. That's my concern. Other discussion?
Supervisor Mask?
Supervisor Mask, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with you on those busy roads like Highway N. I have two highways in my district, County Highway X and County Highway C, south of 153, that are not as heavily traveled. And so I would think that something like that could be written into opening up for some of the roads. I agree, though, Highway N and a couple others like that are very dangerous. I was a truck driver, so I know what that's like. So I would like to see some of these rural county roads open. Thank you.
Other discussion? Other discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on to resolutions. Environmental Resources Committee, item 10B, 1A, approval of the Town of Texas Local Zoning Ordinance Amendment, Resolution 70-21. Any questions? From the Infrastructure Committee, item 10B, 2A, a resolution approving decision-making process for 28th Avenue Corridor, Resolution 71-21. Any discussion? Go ahead. We have staff that would like to address. Okay, I guess we have a whole presentation. As brief as the administrator?
I'm Kevin Lang, I'm an engineer for the Highway Department, and just give you guys a quick briefing kind of on what this Highway R 28th Avenue project is. Highway R was developed as part of the US 5129 when that major infrastructure was built in our area. That's better, isn't it? Okay, so R was built when 51 and 29 were reconstructed in our area. The highway that we have jurisdiction over as a county begins near Highway N at the state park entrance in Rib Mountain, and it extends up to 52 Parkway. So it goes up over the Rib River, past Home Depot, and up past Menards, and up to 52 Parkway at those lights. From there, the city has jurisdiction of that road going up to the north to West Wausau Avenue. That's where Steepy is, as everybody knows. It's a very steep hill that really could be a challenge in regular vehicles in dry weather, much less in the winter. And then when you get to West Wausau Avenue and go up to the north, that is under the Village of Maine, and Betty is here in the background, so that's under the Village of Maine's jurisdiction. Dave's going to go through, he was involved many years ago in kind of the planning and what was looked at on this road, so I'll let him give a little background on that, and then I can give you a quick briefing on where we're at on the project, and then I think Lance might help out with that decision tree. Page 64. If you don't mind. 64?
The map.
64.
No, the map.
The map on 64.
There you go.
That's what I'll reference. Thank you, sir. I'm Dave Mack. I'm the planning manager for the county at the Conservation Planning and Zoning Office. And I'm here to talk just a little bit about the historical perspective or context of where this project comes from. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to drop this for a minute. When we start planning processes like this, we really try to look at what would we consider to be the purpose.
Dave, the mic's not on. Can you turn that mic on, please? Otherwise, it's not coming.
I do think it's on, right? You hear me in the back? Jerry, you're good? To it. Okay. All right. Thank you. So what we try to do when we're doing planning projects like this in the beginning, especially if we're looking at something that's new, is to try to determine what the purpose of that roadway would be and the need for that project within the area. And so that's kind of the process that started here. Back in 2000, 20 years ago, the area developed a local arterial circulation plan for the metro area. That plan was developed by all of the communities in the area and the county to take a look at how those arterial roadways could be built to move people and goods around the community in a most safe and efficient manner. And so as part of that whole process at the time, really kind of started with the Highway 5129 reconstruction that was pretty much starting to be talked about at that time. The county got involved with this process to look at what we consider to be, that you can see on the map, kind of a loop concept of looping the community with a county highway system, and then having the local communities inside kind of create their arterials to connect to that loop and feed traffic in and out of the area, kind of like a wheel and a spoke kind of a process. And so part of this project in this whole view was 28th Avenue in the far northwest part of the metro area. 28th Avenue would be that north-south connection to get people from the north and part of the northwestern parts of the county into the more of the metro area or Wausau proper on a roadway that would be more of that arterial or more heavily traveled roadway in the area. Over the last 20 years or so, some parts of this has been built. The county's been involved quite heavily, like Kevin said, that County Highway R project in Rib Mountain. We also have worked on a couple of different projects in Weston on the County Highway X corridor. And we even were in the village of Rothschild trying to create that southern loop where we actually built some roads, a road and the bridge that's down there. Ultimately, that process kind of stymied, and we discontinued working on some of this. And over the last 20 years now, we've come to realize that this whole loop concept is not going to materialize from a lot of reasons. A lot of them would be how to cross the Wisconsin River in a couple of places to cross, on the north side or the south loop as well. So some of this has just pretty much gone away. Some of the local communities have built some of these roads, but a good share of them have not. And that's just the way the community has developed over the last 20 years or so. So some of the things that were more specific to that northwest part of the metro area, we're looking at that north crossing for the Wisconsin River on the northern part of Wausau. That never really materialized because of the growth that has not occurred in that area. You would need to have a lot more growth, a lot more development to occur to create that real purpose and need for a bridge. And so without that bridge there and a good connection to the Highway 51 corridor, that has not taken place. When Highway U and K interchange was built, we pretty much eliminated the idea of connecting back with a loop across the river in that vicinity. And so that's one of those reasons why it hasn't taken place. The Highway U corridor itself hasn't developed like we thought it would over the last 20 years. And so there isn't as much development happening on that northwest kind of quadrant, if you will, of the metro area to sort of justify some of this work. The city of Wausau built Westwood Drive, which is a 4-lane roadway that parallels the freeway, but it's only a half a mile away from the 28th Avenue corridor. And so we start to think about what is that purpose and need for the 28th Avenue corridor, and that's what staff and the infrastructure committee is talking about at this particular time. Just to give you a little bit of an update kind of on traffic volumes in that area. Right now, traffic on 28th Avenue from about the top of the hill out to the County Highway U area is about 1,900 cars a day. Back in 2009, we had a traffic forecasting model done, and it estimated about 3,000 cars a day would be there in 2019. So we have not reached that potential that we saw from 15 years ago or so. Right now, this year, we did another traffic model study, and the estimates for traffic on that corridor are about 5,000 cars a day, but that's for 2050. So we're 30 years from now, we anticipate that there could possibly be 5,000 cars a day out there. Put that in perspective, County Highway N in front of the ski hill has about 5,200 cars a day. County X, just south of the YMCA complex in Kronewetter, has about 4,900 cars a day. And the Town Line Road just up the hill from the Kraft plant has 5,600 cars a day. So we're looking at that level of traffic on this roadway on the 28th Avenue corridor, but not for another 30 years. So then we start talking about that purpose and need at this point in time. So I think I'll give it back to Kevin to talk more about the road project. Sure.
So since that corridor was mapped out, the right-of-way plat was developed for this, the highway department was directed to purchase properties as they became available on there. The intent of that was you avoid relocation costs, and it allowed the county to slowly procure and purchase those versus if you go to build a project, suddenly you have $3, $4, $5 million in real estate you all need to take on it at one time. It was a way to build up to this ultimate project out there. Recently, with some of the traffic models that came up, we've had a couple property owners say, are you building this road? We'd like to do something with our property. And then we've had a couple others come up and say, we'd like to sell our property now. We'd ask the question, what is the future of this project? And that's why this is coming out and coming forward to the county board so that you can have an opportunity to look at it. The status of it now is it's an officially mapped corridor. We've been procuring and purchasing properties along it, so we have a chunk of real estate that we do already own as a county that's set aside for right-of-way. And we're looking to get direction to see if we should continue with the process, if we should work with the municipalities to do something different and transfer this land over to them in some format, if a road should be built. One of the consensus at a staff level is at this time, if a road was to be built, the 4-lane would not be warranted for quite some time. A 2-lane option would be worth looking at. Then the question is, who builds that road? Is the county still staying involved with the process? Is the city and village taking it over? So that is what we're kind of trying to lay out and figure out where to go from this point on this roadway. So I think Administrator Leonard was going to kind of go through that decision tree that we had kind of put out as an outline to ask and get input on how we should proceed on this one.
Thank you. So they did a great job of explaining the history and the conversations that infrastructure has been having. And within your packet, you do have a decision-making framework that Kevin referenced because, again, being very upfront and honest with you, this isn't something that we've ever had to do before. We've put plans in place to acquire property to build roads, and we built them. We've acquired a great deal of property, and as they indicated, there's some question about what does the future really look like in terms of this development. And the Infrastructure Committee came up with this proposed decision-making process to make sure that we address some of the concerns that both Dave and Kevin have alluded to. So you'll see through this process, one of the first things we do, the first thing we're really doing, is making sure we engage with our municipal partners that were referenced, City of Wausau, Village of Maine, and the MPO. We've already started doing that, but you can see we kind of laid out what we expect. We want to have an ultimate decision by each of those municipalities. The City of Wausau, of course, is the city interested in acquiring a portion of that property for 28th Avenue upgrades, because it's not just a question of whether or not the county builds it. Even if the direction from this body is, no, we don't want to build it, the question becomes, what do we do with it, right? And the city has expressed some interest in evaluating some of the safety issues that exist with, as Dave referred to it, and Kevin referred to it as steepy. You know, that's one of the reasons that the property corridor we mapped, the county mapped years ago, calls for that roadway to sweep out to the west to alleviate some of those great issues. So we're going to engage the city, engage the Village of Maine to really get those very clear direction from their part, whether or not they're interested. County staff are going to continue to work under item number 2 to help the county board make some determinations. So we're going to make sure we obtain that 2050 transportation sustainability study from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning. We had some conversations with staff from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning. That should be done shortly, and this the reason we're asking to wait is this corridor is discussed there. We want to obtain any other information that the committee or this county board directs us to get. We're then going to bring that to the Infrastructure Committee and report the action from those other municipalities. And one item that was added to the staff, to this proposal from staff, added by a committee member, was the need for us to determine whether or not there was need for the property in the corridor associated with a potential county facility at 28th Avenue and County Highway U. So as you've undoubtedly heard, we've been discussing for some time the potential of relocating the highway department and potentially other departments to an area outside of what I'll call the major metro area, the current location of the highway shop on West Street, to a location that better suits the work that we do. And this was one of those areas within that corridor. We're then going to have formal action by the Infrastructure Committee to bring a recommendation to the board. The options that were laid out are those initial options that staff and the committee identified. We can maintain that corridor map in its current state, and as Kevin referenced, we do have some owners wishing to sell us those pieces of property within that map. We can maintain a portion of the property in the corridor as it's associated with the potential development of a county facility on 28th Avenue and County Highway U. Can direct staff to work to transfer county-owned property within that corridor to the appropriate municipalities for their use for roadway improvements. Or the last option, number 4, that we were able to come up with was direct staff to divest that property through public sale or other means. We also envision the importance of engaging the HR Finance and Property Committee, consistent with the kind of the decision framework that infrastructure would be looking at. And then ultimately, the reason we're here today is this is going to require action from the County Board of Supervisors to, again, give that, provide that direction. So the presentation here today is we're hoping to get feedback, and at your next week meeting, we want to make sure we're proceeding, getting the information that you're ultimately going to need at the conclusion of this process. We want to make sure we're proactive in making sure we cross all those Ts and dot those Is. So with that, if anyone has any questions for staff, we're happy to address them. And I should indicate Chair Seiler or Vice Chair Seiler of the Infrastructure Committee, of course, couldn't be here to lead this discussion, so we did our best.
Okay, questions by the board? Additional additional information that this board might determine useful in making those decisions. Okay, we don't have any. Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on, item 10B2B from the Infrastructure Committee is County Bridge and Culvert Aid, Resolution 76-21. Questions? Okay. Moving on to item 10B3A from Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. A, to create a 1.0 FTE Social Services Coordinator Grant Funded, Resolution 72-21. Any questions? Okay, next we have item 10B3B, a final resolution regarding the unconditional county guarantee of its pro rata share, intergovernmental agreement, and taxable revenue bond financing for Bug Tussle 1 LLC project, Resolution 73-21. Supervisor Robinson.
This is a follow-up to the initial resolution that we adopted last month. And this one would commit us to be part of a partnership with other counties, and I'm going to ask our Corporation Counsel to give an overview of the legal documents associated with this, and then answer any questions that you have afterward.
Okay, Mr. Corp Counsel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Supervisor Robinson indicated, this is the final resolution that follows up with the initial resolution that this board passed. While that document did not bind the board, this document does bind the board in a financial sense. What this document does is it authorizes Fond du Lac County to issue bonds. Marathon County is then guaranteeing a certain portion of those bonds, up to $25 million of them, to finance projects within Marathon County. Those bonds are to constitute general obligation debt of the county. This particular document that's in front of you has been negotiated. I've been working specifically with Rebecca Speckhart, who is our bond counsel from Quarles and Brady in Milwaukee. She's working on behalf of Marathon County and negotiating these documents with Bug Tussle Wireless. I've also obviously reviewed them in detail from my perspective at Corp Counsel to make sure that the documents that we are looking at and eventually approving are going to protect the county as well as the county can be protected in a transaction like this. This particular final resolution, I think, does that. It does allow the guarantee document and additional documents that will be approved along with this transaction to be edited after this final resolution is passed, but the policy behind those documents cannot change, nor would the guarantee amount that the county board would be approving on Tuesday. Going along with this final resolution is going to be a guarantee agreement. That's the county's guarantee of debt service, its share of the debt service that's involved in this project. That guarantee is counteracted by two agreements. One is a reimbursement agreement that requires Bug Tussle Wireless to reimburse the county for any payments that the county would have to make under its guarantee. So if all goes well under this project, the project would not contemplate the county making any payments, If, however, Bug Tussle were to miss any payments and the county had to make them, they would be required to reimburse us. There is a second guarantee by Hilbert Communications, which is the parent company of Bug Tussle Wireless. Hilbert Communications is guaranteeing that they would reimburse the county if Bug Tussle Wireless does not reimburse the county. There are also mortgage and loan agreements that will be a part of this transaction. They require Bug Tussle Wireless to keep any property lien-free, and the county would have the first and priority lien on any property that's in place as a part of their construction under these projects. We would also get a security interest in any fiber or cables that they lay throughout Marathon County. Jerry Klein from CCIT and I are reviewing a facilities access agreement that would grant the county access rights to the towers that we're contemplating in this project. And finally, there is an intergovernmental agreement between all of the counties that are working with Bug Tussle Wireless. I've reviewed these documents. They do have all of the protections in place that I would want to be in place in a transaction like this. They do not take away the entire risk of such a transaction, but they do address that risk in the best way that the county could. So the decision for the board is the policy decision of weighing that risk against the county's ability to protect against the risk. But from a legal perspective, the documents, I think, put all of those protections in place, all of the legal protections that we can put into place.
Okay, questions by the board? Supervisor Butke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing to clarify. Does the county actually take a lien then on the equipment? They do.
That is
Because you did
correct.
say lien-free initially, but it's. we
They're
take a
lien-free
lien. We're
beyond the
just
county's lien.
We're just preventing anyone else from either getting in front of us or behind us.
Exactly right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, again, this will require a 3/4 majority vote. We will move on to item 10B 3C, approve the 2021 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 74-21. Any questions on those transfers? Okay, item 4, 10B4 from the Executive Committee, a resolution in opposition of the proposed legislation on the use of ARPA for housing, Resolution 75-21. Give a little bit of an overview. Under the proposed legislation, it would require this county to use the lesser of two numbers, one either $1 million or 10% of the ARPA funds to use for housing and so this resolution basically opposes that, saying that local entities such as the Marathon County Board should and does have potentially better understanding of the need of the and the ability to spend those dollars. Is there any questions on the proposed resolution?
Yes, Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Supervisor Harris.
So what would we get total in ARPA funds, and how much would 10% be?
10% would be roughly 2.6 million. So the lesser of that number would be the requirement of $1 million.
Okay. And what are we, if we're not using then ARPA funds for either, looks like workforce housing infrastructure, establishing a loan program for rehabilitation of older workforce housing, establishing a loan program for building new workforce housing, or redeveloping it's a commercial, which could include shopping malls. If we're not using that funding for a mix of affordable options, how else are we addressing it in terms of the county?
I think that one of the things that I would, as a member of the Finance Committee, we're developing that criteria. What we're really saying in this resolution, we don't know at this point whether or not we will use 1 million, 10 million to address that issue, but we are developing the criteria that will determine if and how much of that area. We don't need, we think that we are better suited to determine what that need is, and not a predetermined money amount by the state. Either $1 million in this case is the way that proposed legislation reads. Marathon County should be able to determine whether that's $1 million, whether it's $3 million, whether it's $5 million of the 26, or if it's nothing. We haven't made that determination. We haven't determined what we're going to use any of the ARPA funds at this point for at all.
Well, Chairman, I have no issue with that if the county is making decisions in terms of what's better, except for the fact that I think that the plan should be there first before we turn down money. We should say that what we're going to be using, how we're going to address those issues first, and develop the plan before we come up with a resolution saying we're opposing it.
Supervisor Robinson.
This gets at a fundamental issue of local control. So the state legislature, which has no involvement in this money, that came from Washington, wants to tell us how we're going to spend that money. They think they know better than we do. And quite honestly, I'm tired of Madison always telling us what to do. There are 4 prescribed areas on how you can spend money on homeless. There may be 5 or 6 or 7 options, 3 of which they didn't think of. Why does the legislature need to tell us what to do? This isn't to say we won't address housing. It's just telling us we're not comfortable with Madison telling us how we're going to spend federal dollars that they have no role in telling us how to spend. We've had a series of 3 public informational meetings. We had online participation, asking the public on how we should spend the money. Housing was one of those issues, as was childcare, as was broadband, as were a number of other issues. The HR Finance Property Committee is in the process of trying to develop where we spend those money. One of the questions that I would ask is, are those costs even eligible under the Department of Treasury's regulations? I don't know that they are. So, I think there are lots of reasons for us to oppose it, but fundamental is these aren't their dollars. We want local control, and it's time to send that message to Madison.
Supervisor Harris.
Yes, Chairman. And again, I have no problem with us if, we're laying out, this is what we're going to use, this is how we're going to lay it out and how we're going to spend money better and a better way to do it. But I like to see actual guarantees that these issues are going to be dealt with. I'd like to see the plan first before I vote on something to just say, I'm going to oppose it. Because right now, this guarantees that's going to be there. Do I think we could develop a better plan? I do. But I'd like to see that plan before I vote on something to get rid of.
Okay, I've got Supervisor Bizzotto, and then I will go to Supervisor Robinson. Supervisor Bizzotto, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. This may just be a tech glitch on my part, but I don't actually see a written resolution in the packet. And is there something, when I click the kind of sidebar thing to shortcut me to R7521, it just takes me to R7421. Is anyone else experiencing that?
If you open up packet number 2, you will find the resolution that was approved by HR Finance just this week. So
that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Robinson.
Counties weren't contacted, local governments weren't contacted on the development of this bill. AB 605 was introduced approximately 2 weeks ago, went to a hearing after a few days of less than a week of notice, and was voted out on a 6-4 vote. We're working deliberately on a plan. We're trying to understand what the Department of Revenue is going to have as their interim. We're operating on interim final guidelines. We don't want to be taking action that the feds won't recognize because we will wind up paying the feds back those dollars. That's why it's important for us to have that understanding. If you have concerns about what the plan is in the local level, provide input. We've had, again, those 3 public hearings, and we've had opportunities for the public to weigh in. We're developing a plan. We're not on their schedule, but they seem to be rushing this legislation through the legislature. I would anticipate that that will be ultimately, if it does pass, vetoed by the governor. But again, we receive the money from the federal government to deal with pandemic-related problems. I think we're in a better position to try to define how those dollars are spent. If you want housing in that plan, offer that as a suggestion, and we'll look at it.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other discussion?
Sorry, Chair, I have another question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Bizzotto.
Now that I can see the resolution. So this would just, this wouldn't have actually any effect. This is one of those, we would just be sending a message to the legislature things. Is that right?
That is correct. We would be opposing the legislation simply from a standpoint that we have not, one, developed our plan yet, and this county feels, and this county board feels that we're in a better position to determine what those uses are. And again, we haven't even seen the final rules at this point yet. We still have interim final rules from the Treasury. The Treasury has not finalized those rules at this point, and so we don't even know. But what we're doing is we're just making our understanding that we don't support that proposed change in the legislation. Any other discussion? Okay, we will move on then. Announcements and/or requests. I've got a couple of announcements. One, a note to the board: when you're submitting your expense reimbursements for mileage and the such, please attach your deck sheet for your insurance coverage. And make sure that that deck sheet for the insurance coverage covers the quarter for which you're submitting those mileage reimbursement requests. If they don't tie out or they don't show the amount of coverage that you have on the vehicle, I have to reach out to you and get a copy of it because under our reimbursement requirements by the county, if I don't have the insurance declaration, and I know in some cases people have submitted them in past, but under the new system that we're using through Laserfish, I don't have access to the prior once they're approved. So please resubmit, make sure that you submit those. And I have notified all of the individuals that of the changes that are needed for reimbursement for last quarter. And then on a note that has gone out to this board, as you may or may not be aware, Supervisor Sly has passed away. He has served the township beginning in 1987, first starting out as a building inspector, then a town supervisor, and for almost 30 years as the town chairman. Mr. Sly was elected to this board in 2010. Mr. Sly is a dedicated servant for the town residents and the county residents. He represented his constituents the best he knew how. And I want to express my sincere sympathy to the family. As you see on the table, there's a bouquet representing the appreciation that this board, and there will be a presentation and acknowledgement of his service on Tuesday, excuse me. Any other announcements and/or requests? Supervisor Robinson?
Earlier this evening, several members of the county board were at a event sponsored by the Wausau Women's Community and particularly the Marathon County Domestic Abuse Intervention Team, where they recognized a number of individuals for their outstanding contributions to dealing with domestic abuse. And I'd just like to formally recognize those individuals. One was Officer Sarah Bedfish from the Wausau Police Department for excellence and collaboration. Our own assistant District Attorney David Rundy for his outstanding achievement in supporting survivors of domestic violence, and former Court Commissioner Sandy Marcus for lifetime achievement for supporting those survivors. I think that the comments tonight reflected their commitment and dedication to dealing with people that are abused and the survivors.
Supervisor Butke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I regretfully have to announce that the executive director of the ADRC is going to be leaving us. The good news is she has accepted a position with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. So it's a move up for her and certainly a feather in her cap, and we wish her well. And we will have a contact now down in Madison that hopefully we can work with in the long run. But we will be opening up a search. We'll probably have to appoint an interim director, and we'll be going from there. Thanks.
Okay, any other announcements and or requests? All right, we're down to item number 12. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Christensen and second by Supervisor Seefeld to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, those who wish to stay. Motion is carried and we stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all of your attention and work. Thank you.